Hey everybody, I'm Mark Fetter, co-founder of Everydae. Really excited for you to check out this interview I just had with Keith Wilkerson from College Thoughts. A few of the themes that we discuss are how and when to put together a successful college application, what can students write about in their college essays, including the one question that Keith asks all of his clients. He's been doing this for over a decade. Definitely want to check that out. And third is, what is school fit and why does it matter? Enjoy the interview. Just to get started, for anyone who doesn't know you, I guess I can start by saying Keith is a graduate of Princeton University behind me, but beyond having the prestige of an elite university on your resume, just give a quick intro. Who are you and what is College Thoughts?
Yeah, so I am a native of Philadelphia, a lifetime Philadelphia Eagles fan. I did have the privilege of going to Princeton, and I went to Princeton as a first generation college student. And so the supports that I had from organizations, from my school's guidance team, was significant in being able to make the transition from an inner city high school to a place like Princeton. So helping people on that journey has just always been an important thing for me because it's been an important part of my own story. And so that's what I bring to this. I have spent my entire career in education between private school placement, college readiness, financial aid counseling, and now in College Thoughts, I bring all those things together into a unique organization that helps students think about those things on a multidisciplinary level.
Nice. Yeah, I'd love that. Talk a little bit more about the company and some of the services you offer. To anyone watching, we'll provide information in the notes below this video. So if you're interested, definitely check out the website. But Keith, let's just kind of start with some basics for anyone who may not be nearly as familiar as you are with the application process. When are applications due and when do you recommend to your clients to begin, if not thinking about, actively starting to work on the application process?
Sure. So a lot of early decision or early action deadlines, which means that you're going to submit your application early in the hopes that colleges will tell you early what they've decided. Those applications will be due on November 1st or November 15th. And then regular admission deadlines are normally January 1st, January 15th, or February 1st. We're advising families that they pay careful attention to deadlines in this season because some things have changed because of COVID-19. So we want people to be thoughtful about whether or not those deadlines still hold true for the schools that you're most interested in, but those are the deadlines that normally apply to the process. As far as when you should get started, now. That's what we tell everybody. That's our static answer. Now. It just doesn't matter what grade level you're in. Now's the right time to get started. As far as the intensity of that start or what you should be doing right now, that varies by grade level. But if you are in high school, there is something that you can be doing now that will help to make your journey to college easier and less stressful in the long run.
Got it. Yeah, that's a fair answer. I think now is always a good time, but let's get some actionable advice, I think, for anyone watching. So you said it definitely differs per grade. So as an incoming freshman, at the time of us recording this right now, school is about to kick back into the fall semester. So as an incoming freshman, ninth grader, what would you recommend that a student do to set themselves up for success, for a successful college application, but without worrying, putting too much pressure on themselves?
Right. So I think the difference that we have between ninth graders and someone who's, say, a rising junior or a rising senior, when I meet a rising junior or senior, I am talking to them about the cards that they already have in their hands. These are the classes you've already taken, the academic track you're already on, the activities that you've already participated in. And I am telling you the best play that you can make with the cards you're holding in your hand. If I meet a ninth grader, I am talking to you about how we could plan differently if we were being thoughtful about what cards we take out of the deck. Well, that's a completely different situation. So let's think about what classes can we take in ninth grade that will put us on a track to take AP and honors classes later. Let's think about advocacy with the teacher because ninth grade grades do matter. Let's think about what type of reading we want to do, because reading consistently is one of the things that builds skills for standardized testing later. So just giving ninth graders some practical advice about how you become a better academician now, so that when you get to the point where you're ready to apply to college, you're advancing skills that you've been practicing all along, and you don't make some of the mistakes that students make along the way.
Got it. And so then let's fast forward a couple years. As a junior, it's crunch time. What do you say to those students who, I love that metaphor. The cards are in your hand. How do you play those cards?
Yeah. So when I'm meeting a junior for the first time, it's what can we do to maximize your score on standardized testing? So let's look at your 10th grade PSAT results and see what we can do to try to maximize outcomes. It's what leadership positions might we qualify for this year so that in senior year we can actually demonstrate leadership. What are we doing with free time? So have we been thoughtful about community service? Have we been thoughtful about summer plans? Just helping juniors figure out, this is the last full year that you're going to have before colleges see your application. What can we show that has happened developmentally so that colleges get a sense of the student and the person that they would be admitting to their community? So just helping students think about junior year on a broader scale, like, yes, it is the most important time for grades. Yes, it is a critical year for standardized testing, but what are those other nuances of the application, like leadership, like research, like being a team player? What are those things that we can also develop that are going to round out that application in the long run?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also on that note, I think a common question that I see online, but also from my previous experience, having evaluated a lot of profiles for college myself, is what do I write? What should my essays be about? What do I write about? And so some of those things you just touched on can potentially be good essay fodder. How might you work with a client, or what would you recommend to anyone watching this who is ruminating on that question of what should my essays be about and have no idea where to start?
So I think a lot of times students start with the essays on the Common Application, and they're trying to approach the questions, but some of the questions lead you to familiar places. If you ask a teenager, what's the biggest challenge you faced in high school and how did you overcome it? Challenges when you're 16 and 17 are often very similar. It's a challenge in class, or I didn't get selected for an opportunity. So what we encourage students to do is to start with what is important to them and to move forward toward the questions. And for most conversations that I have with students about essays, we start with the same question. I've been asking the same question, Mark, for 10 years, and it still produces the most interesting outcomes. I ask every student that if you were going to bump your head tomorrow and forget everything you've ever known, and right before the accident happened, you could save 10 memories from your life, which 10 would you keep? And then out of that conversation, we start talking about what's important to the student. Because a lot of times a baseball player who has tons of baseball to his credit in his activity list, when I ask him about his 10 memories, baseball never even comes up. And so now in the essay, it's going to give us a chance to give another angle, whereas everybody's expecting him to talk about the time he hit the grand slam and won the big game. And instead, he's talking about how interested he is in animals and how he's looking forward to being a veterinarian someday. And it's just a real hard pivot because we're thinking about what's important to the student and what they're thinking about, which is something that's really important to us here.
Yeah, that's great. I think one thing that's really awesome about that specific sort of introspective question is it forces them to think, as you just said, about themselves and not about how to game the system of what do I want the admissions office to hear, right? You're not even thinking about it from that angle. So that's great.
Oh, absolutely. I tell students, my goal is not to make the admissions office like you. My goal is to make the admissions office know you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I am trying to twist the admissions office's arm, then I am creating outcomes for students to get into schools that might not be good fits for them. I want them to be so authentic that an admissions office can look at their application and say, this is an amazing student that would not have a good experience here. And then I try to help students understand that no, in some cases, is a positive answer. You know, there have been jobs, there have been opportunities, there have been schools where in the aftermath, I have been very grateful that they said no, because there were things that they saw about me that I did not recognize at the time that would have made those opportunities difficult. So I think that my goal is to help students figure out how to be their most authentic selves. And then out of that, the hope is that they're going to get into schools where they're going to have great experiences.
Yep. Yeah. And so that, brings up another great question is, how do you identify what a school fit? Like, what is school fit? Why does that matter? And if you're working with a student or a family that, maybe they understand themselves well, they have that introspection, but then how do you connect the dots between here's who I am and identifying, like, is it Princeton or whatever other school? Like, how do you help a student, or what would you suggest to them to say, hey, this is a great program for you?
Well, it's always Princeton, Mark, but outside of that, I think that we're talking to students about match and fit. Match is academically, is this the right level of rigor? Is this the correct academic challenge? Is it offering the courses that are going to stimulate you mentally and get you to the next stage in what you were hoping to study? So we want to make sure that we are encouraging students to pursue the right level of challenge in this next academic part of their journey. So are you looking at schools that are going to be appropriately challenging? Are you stretching yourself a little bit above the level of challenge that you had in high school? Do you have balance between your reach schools, your solid schools, and your safety schools in terms of how your academic profile aligns with the students that typically are admitted to those places? That's all about match. But then fit, to me, is equally as important. Socially, are these your people? Is this your tribe? Are you going to have a rich experience? I feel like at Princeton, I actually, in spite of the fact that I was taught by some of the world's finest professors, I actually learned more outside of the classroom than I did inside of the classroom, because of the rich array of people that I was surrounded by and how we work together to solve problems, and even the network that exists today based on the people that I went to school with. So socially, is there going to be a right fit? Are those students at that school concerned about the same things that I'm concerned about? And are they going to stretch my worldview, but also offer me a place where I'm going to feel very much at home? And I think that we encourage students to use tools like the College Board's Big Future website for academic fit. I think we encourage them to use websites like Niche to try to get a sense of what the school is like socially. We're strong proponents of visiting when we're not in a pandemic. So, but now even taking advantage of virtual panel discussions, taking advantage of virtual tours, trying to use the resources that are available on the internet to get the best sense of a place possible, to make sure that it's not just, Harvard might be a great school academically, but if it's a hyper-competitive place and I don't respond to competition well, it might be a great school that's not a great school for me. And so we're trying to help students think about those things. And I think in spite of the fact that I went to Princeton, I don't want people to come to the process with a name brand perspective on the process. The best school for you might be a school that everybody knows, and it might be a school that you've never heard of before. And I think we have to think about both of those things.
Most definitely. So, one thing that's big to us at Everyday, like one of our underlying principles, is helping families ace high school without the stress. This process of transitioning from high school to college or whatever is after college, if that's not necessarily for you, it can be very stressful. So what advice do you have for students, but also parents, to navigate this process of high school, if this is a very important life stage, to be however they would define successful, but do it in a way that you're not creating additional unnecessary anxiety and stress around it? It's a loaded question, but.
Yeah, it is a loaded question. I think the two things that we tell every family that help to significantly manage the stress are, number one, start early. Like, a lot of the stress comes if somebody comes to me as a rising senior and they need 200 points on the SAT and they haven't started their essays yet, they're not really sure where they want to apply. That's going to be a really stressful process because the clock is our opponent and there's so much to do and so little time to do it in. So starting early, the work that you have to do to get into college does not change, but the time span in which you have to do the work is totally under your control. So if we start earlier and pace it out differently, it doesn't have to be as stressful because we just have more time. I think the other thing that we tell families is to minimize the noise. Like a lot of the stress that the students face because of this process is because other students have told them that they're supposed to be stressed and it's going to be super hard. And I heard that nobody got into that school last year. And it mounts for parents when they talk about it at work and people say discouraging things. And so I think that if parents keep the college plan close to the vest and they try to minimize some of those conversations with, armchair experts who don't really know a ton about the process but have tons to say. A terrible time for most of the students that we work with, it tends to be Thanksgiving dinner because applications are due around that time and every uncle and cousin and friend who's at dinner wants to talk about what you need to do in order to be successful in the process. I tell students, if you just minimize some of those conversations, it does tend to put you in a better place overall, just as you have a small team, you manage that team well, and you make sure that you have a good plan for moving the work forward.
Great advice. That's so aligned with what, everything we live by, and I think one of the reasons we've gotten along in some of our previous conversations, I loved when you said it yourself, that consistency is greater than intensity. Such a great, concise statement.
One of the data points that we love is that there's a study that says that if students want to improve their SAT scores by 200 points over a span of 6 months, the key is that they need to spend 6 minutes a day doing something that's test related. Well, that's just fascinating because most kids are saying, well, how many hours do I have to spend to bring my score up? And it's not really about hours. That's why we love the everydae platform, because just even in the name, it's just really clear what you need to do if you really want to build these muscles for testing is to do something every day and to make sure that you're developing mastery over time, not necessarily building intensity. I tell students that the SAT is a 4-hour test. You have to think about it like it's a marathon. And if I want to get ready for a marathon, I can do hours of running, but I need to divide those up into days, because if I do all of my hours of preparation the night before, that's not going to work. It's the same amount of time, but it's not allowing those muscles to build in the same way. And I think that's the same way the students approach testing. Cramming never worked for me. I don't think that it works for the SAT, and when we can help students avoid that, I think we're doing good work for them.
Definitely. So last question for you. We live in a crazy time right now. I'm just curious, your perspective, how do you think coronavirus is going to affect the future of higher education in general?
That's a loaded question for sure. I think that a lot of people are asking questions about the value proposition for college. And there's a division of thought between, is college valuable experientially, or is it valuable in terms of validation? Like I know for me, without a lot of education in my family's background, Princeton was validating for me. I think that a lot of the clients that I've been able to work with over the years respect my educational background, and it sort of goes before me and clears the way. But I think that for students who already have that validation from their context, they come from a background where they know that they are going to be secure, I think that college for them is more experiential. And it's hard to have some of those experiences in this climate. So I think that people have to give a lot of thought in terms of what they want out of college and whether they can get it in this space. But for students who are preparing to apply for college, because we don't know what's going to happen next, maybe we have a vaccine by the end of the year, maybe this runs into 2021. I think the best thing that students can do is to be ready. And then as opportunities present themselves to take standardized tests or to visit schools again, or to engage schools in this virtual climate, at least you're prepared for what's coming next. I think that if you take advantage of this time and of this moment, there's not a ton of traveling to be done this summer, not a lot of activities going on. If you take advantage of this time to be better prepared than you would have otherwise been, then when opportunity comes, you can take advantage of it. And if you don't use this time to prepare and all of a sudden the doors of opportunity open, you might regret that you didn't make better use of this window.
Cool. So I mentioned at the top of the conversation, I wanted to come back and discuss college thoughts a little bit more. One thing that I find really interesting and unique about your service, or at least how you present it on your website, is the emphasis on coaching students in mental toughness and grit. So just tell anyone watching, what makes College Thoughts unique, and especially would love to hear your take on how you coach them up on that grit.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. College Thoughts is unique because we are not a test preparation service exclusively. We are not an essay coaching service exclusively, but we bring all those services together under one roof so that we can have a comprehensive strategic plan. Like, one of the things that's important to me is that if I meet a student who is a B student in school, and they say to me, I want you to force my SAT scores as high as possible to compensate for these grades, students often don't understand that if you get a really high SAT score, but your grades don't validate that score, then what you're showing colleges is that you can be great on one day, but you don't make the choice to be great every day. And we want to encourage students to make sure that your application tells a balanced story. So I think the comprehensive nature of what we do sets us apart because we're thinking about how all the pieces fit together. I think in addition to that, because we're thinking about how to present every student in the best light, we want to teach students to be tougher. We want to teach them how to lean into discomfort. We want to teach them that the difference between a B plus and an A minus is normally that one person had the foresight to advocate with the teacher and the other person did not. We want them to learn how to navigate academic spaces instead of just teaching them tricks and strategies to gain a few points here and there. And I think that what comes out of that is, at the end of it, students don't only get into colleges that are a good fit for them, but like, I just had a great conversation with a student the other day. He's a principal at one of the major accounting firms in New York City. And he's telling me that he's still using some of those lessons that we talked about mental dexterity and pivoting in this space to get through the pandemic as he's existing in a completely different climate. But some of the lessons about being flexible mentally and learning how to think ahead for the next challenge and learning how to communicate clearly, those don't just apply to the college process, those apply to life. So I would like to think that while our job is to help people get into colleges that are the right match and fit for them, that we're actually helping them to navigate life better. So that's what I enjoy about what we do.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I highly recommend anyone watching check out College Thoughts. Keith creates great content. And if you're interested in hiring an expert to help yourself or your child with an application to college, definitely give them a call. And if you're looking for help on the SAT, give us a call. So thank you for watching, and Keith, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely. It was great.
Awesome.